Order.
There are 4 items before the committee this morning.
Good morning. And let's take item 3 and 4 first, which are park issues.
Item 3 is the City Clerk Annual Report relative to the Pico, Genesee Community Pocket Park Trust Fund.
Hello, my name is Lisa Kim. I'm reporting from the City Clerk's office. This item is relative to the annual trust fund report for the Pico Genesee Community Pocket Park Trust Fund. As you can see, there's a balance of $105,360.78, and there is no activity.
Great, and I want to check. This is in Council District number 5?
I believe it is 10, but
10.
I
I
can double check
apologize.
that.
5 and 5 is 10. I made a mistake. I apologize. Mr. Henry, did you want to comment on that? You guys been briefed on it, and you're okay with it?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
report on
So the deputy for Mr. Wesson is familiar with this. We keep moving on it, so we take this annual report. How could this fund grow?
Interest,
Any other way?
donations
Donations.
or contributions.
And who would be leading that charge for donations?
We administer the trust fund, so we would receive it if somebody did donate.
And maybe the area neighborhood councils, I don't know if they've been briefed on it, because this has been around every year to get this report. Maybe they could know about it, and if they have surplus funds, they may be interested, because pocket parks are important for an area. So I'll leave it up to the council office.
it's not quite enough for a park, and so
Right.
you gotta
For
put some more funds.
Probably for a parking space, but yeah, you could start that way. Okay? Thank you. How long have you been in the clerk's office?
All right.
How long have you been in the clerk's office?
5 years.
5 years. Good. Where do you go to college?
UCLA?
UCLA. Very good. Have a great day. Thank you. Item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to a gift agreement with the L.A. Harbor Watts Economic Development Corporation for the Pacific Overlook.
Great. And who's reporting on this? From Recreation and Parks Commission. This is the agreement from the Harbor Watts Economic Development Corporation relative to the Overlook. It's a grant fund of $750,000 for improvements. The council office supports this. City attorney have any problems with this?
No.
No problems. So the recommendation to approve the gift, to direct the board secretary to transmit this gift to the mayor, to authorize the president and secretary to execute it from the commission, approve the development of a Pacific Overlook as described in the body of the report, approve granting an easement as described for the Department of Public Works, Bureau of Engineering for purpose of Pacific Avenue and creating and maintaining street parking to benefit the subject property. Authorize the board president and secretary to execute the easement documents as well as staff to issue right-of-way permit. So let's expedite this to council, because I think this is something Ms. Hahn is very supportive of. So we'll recommend approval on that.
Okay.
Okay, and that brings us back to item number 2 right now.
Okay, and item number 2 is another report from the City Clerk relative to Anti-Smoking Trust Fund.
Hello, reporting again. Lisa Kim from the City Clerk's office for item number 2. This is also an annual report that we produce. Anti-Smoking Trust Fund, balance of $456.68.
Yeah, that's like 2 cartons of cigarettes. I mean, that's not a lot of money, right? What was it? Do you know in its history? I know it predates.
This started back in 1998.
Right.
It was for a partial settlement from a case, Mangini versus Philip Morris Incorporated, for $750,000.
And we're down to $500.
Yes.
It probably cost you about $100 to prepare for this report, right? Just in staff time? And looking at
Maybe
the
a
whole
little
big
less
picture?
than that.
What should we do with this? Should we, is there a sunset clause, something under fire? It's not going to grow. This is not going to grow, right?
No, very minimally.
Yeah. Would you come back, before we get to council, would you recommend action to terminate this, or check with whatever city attorney's office to see if it would be appropriate to terminate for a trust fund that's only $500?
Okay.
And then let us know when we get to council?
Sure.
Because we may want to add an amendment to that. Ask Bach to look into this, Lisa. Okay, thank you so much. I'm joined by Councilman Wesson. Madam Clerk, will you recapture the items that we've taken so I could ask for?
Items number 2 and 3 were annual reports from the city clerk relative to status of trust funds, and the recommendation was to note and file number 2 and number 3. And number 4 is a gift agreement relative to the Pacific Overlook, and the recommendation is to approve the CAO report.
Great. Okay. So are you okay with those, Mr. Weston? Okay, we're so ordered. Now take it back to item 1. Lisa.
Item 1 is the city attorney report and an ordinance in response to motion Smith-Zine relative to amending the LA Municipal Code to prohibit smoking in outdoor dining areas and within 10 feet of such areas and related matters.
Mr. City Attorney, good morning.
David Schulman, specially assigned to this in the City Attorney's Office. Mr. Chair, this matter was held by your committee. Our report and transmittal dated June 12th was heard shortly thereafter by your committee. It was passed out of committee. The committee chair placed a hold on it with the purpose of having a walk around. That occurred a couple of weeks ago. Yesterday afternoon, I was asked by your staff to brief representatives from the 2 new members of this committee, Mr. Wesson and Mr. Reyes' staff, and a number of interesting suggestions and proposals were raised by those 2 staff members. I'm uncertain whether to leave it to Mr. Wesson or his representative to make a presentation or summarize it myself. I'm getting a signal that I should summarize, so I'll be glad to. There were some discussions about exploring whether an enforcement mechanism, at least temporarily, should be built into this. We received no directive from your committee other than to make violations of signage postings or smoking itself an infraction. But there was no agency assigned to enforce it, and we received, our office, a call from the LA Times yesterday asking whether there was an enforcement mechanism in place. There are a number of creative thoughts, among them whether to speak to various city departments and see if one might be assigned an 18-month only enforcement responsibility, since all of the city departments are overtaxed. To permanently task any department to yet another enforcement responsibility would be onerous. On the other hand, in speaking to one of the county public health representatives who's very familiar with how legislation helps social change in this regard, his experience is that people accommodate these ordinances pretty quickly. So it's probably a political decision for the 3 of you whether to proceed as drafted, have it be an infraction, but there being no mechanism for enforcing that, or considering an 18-month only provision so that there's some teeth behind this until people get used to it. So if you choose to put this over for 30 or 60 days, I would be delighted to work with your staff deputies to explore these and related ideas and come back with an amended draft ordinance reflecting these new considerations.
Do you have anything you want to add to that right now, Mr. Wesson?
I want to just listen to you for a minute.
Okay, here's the thing that I know. I think there's an overwhelming public support for regulation in this area here, but there's an overwhelming challenge is how you get regulation, because this is a social norm. It's not like speeding down the street or something visible. It's a thing that people want in their space as they go to their restaurants now. As I spoke earlier on, Mr. Weston, I believe there was a time when we did smoke in this building. We did smoke anywhere where one smoked. Mr. Browdy was a champion of that, and over the years, other regulations have come to narrow the area where you can smoke. I think the evolution of outdoor dining is part to do to the smoking ban of indoors, where people went outdoors. Now, people who don't smoke want to enjoy the outdoors without smoke and secondhand smoke and all those areas of interest. One of our challenges in our walkabout was that it does have an impact on a business that may have a clientele that likes to smoke. I don't want to. You could still smoke And I think it's a value that when someone makes a decision. I made a value not to smoke. I did smoke. But I have no harm against anybody who does smoke. I just have, I don't want to say harm, I just have concern when we litter when we smoke. I don't want to have that's an issue, but that's not right here in front of us. As a business, though, and the one business, and we're going to hear from some public comments there, on Western Avenue, it was very evident to me that we were going to change the dynamic of that person's livelihood if there was a ban, if there wasn't an option for him to have a rear area. If there was two locations to smoke, there was an option that someone could go to one other location. We talked about that briefly yesterday, Counselor. At the same time, in walking down the street cafes of Larchmont Boulevard, where it was 33-2 in favor of some restriction on that, including a young lady who was smoking a Marlboro, they all agreed, except two, that this was something to do. And I think there's real consensus there in a very public, on top of a way. Sometimes a larger facility, like on Western, there's more space. So, we've had this for a long time, and I don't know if Mr. Lee is here from Mr. Smith's office at all, who was the deputy champion on that issue there. I also know, too, that it's something that his time has come to try to give that space back in a way. But I want to, on the enforcement issue there, the only thing, there's a lot of things are, you know how, you're a city attorney, right? How many tickets did the LAPD give the people for littering last year, you think?
Probably not a lot.
Yeah, like none, but there's a lot of litter. So education is so important. Education is the key to a lot of things, self-enforcement. A big turning point for me, because this is a tough economy, Mr. Wesson, and if they're here and they have a different opinion, but the California Restaurant Association, which is the advocacy group for that business enterprise, has neutral on this, which means they, in the past, were vigorously opposed to this, now are absolutely neutral on this. Other cities in the region have successfully continued their business to the extent that I've understood with this type of restriction on that. But I want to be fair, because Los Angeles is a city of all peoples, and you and I both do represent neighborhoods that have great people who come from faraway places, who make their home here, who have socialization in a different way than maybe what a traditional American family would have in banquet halls and in restaurants in large areas in the Wilshire areas. That. With that being said, I'd like to call on public comment, but I also ask you if you had any questions for our city attorney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I have a question at this point. It does make sense to me that if we move forward, or as we move forward, that we do this in a very thoughtful way. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that in classes that I've taken to try to quit smoking, that smoking is more addictive than any other drug, cocaine and heroin. So as a person who has this bad habit, I would not want anyone else to pick this habit up. So I wouldn't want to do anything that might catch the attention of some child and they say, hey, that looks cool, let me do that. I also would not want to be in an area and because of some smoke help cause someone to get ill. But I also want to say that I don't want to treat, or smokers should not be treated like lepers. They are not criminals. They are not bad people. And we need to be sensitive to their needs as well. Now, I however, have been trained, and I think that most of us have been trained that in the event that you need to take a drag, you got to go outside around the corner so you don't adversely affect other people. So I believe that it is incumbent of us to try to come up with something that does in fact work. Again, as you mentioned, I'm sensitive to the business community. I can remember the year before I went to Sacramento, there was a ban discussed, and it had an adverse effect on card clubs, poker clubs, in the state of California. So I would be interested to see what the businesses think about that. So anyway, I think that its time has come, and people like myself who every day wake up saying, "Is today going to be the day that I quit?" would be supportive of something that, again, does not adversely affect or entice young people to start smoking. And of course, we wouldn't want to do anything that would make someone else ill. And after a while, you know how to do these things. You don't smoke in the car when you have a child. When you go outside, if you have to. But I mean, we cannot make individuals that have this habit, which is the hardest habit on the planet to break. You can't treat them like lepers or criminals, because they are not.
Right. And with that being said, I would look to the restaurant industry to enhance and enforce signage, which would be there as an awareness that Los Angeles is a smoke-free dining area, or if there's an area on their premise that they could be away more than 10 feet, because that's what the ordinance is, that they could corral. I've seen in airports in Tokyo spaces no further than you to me, Counselor, in plastic, like a big plastic thing and fans in there, people going and smoke, when they do.
Remember when we went to Korea, I was in one of those cubicles.
Were you one of those cubicles? Yeah.
We were looking at
laughing at you. Okay, no. So, but all that being said, I think it's important as we take this step. I don't want to kind of take another 60 days. I think we're very close to it. And I think whether it's a 6-month or a 12-month regulation that we get public information out on it. I just use this analogy for many of the advocates that are here. They call them the 3 E's for traffic in Los Angeles, but they could deal with it. And the 3 E's are engineering, enforcement, and education. And on this particular issue here, we're going to have to engineer the right signage. We're going to have to educate the people. But the enforcement is the one question that it becomes difficult. If someone is allowing, the person would be the enforcement, I would say, would be the operator of the restaurant. Meaning, if I'm in a restaurant and my job is to make sure that I do not serve people liquor after 2 in the morning, and I should be held accountable as the restaurateur of that. If I'm in a restaurant and I allow people to smoke in an area that's not designated, then that's my responsibility. If I have a sanitation grease trap that's not operable, that's my responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. And the only agency that I would assign this to would be, although it would be amongst many things, would be the Los Angeles Police Department, which has the vice units, which goes in to places that have licenses of liquors, but not all these places have licenses. So we may have to think that out for a minute. Let's hear from the public comment to go the right way on that.
But before, if I may add an issue to the enforcement challenge, I'm in the civil division of the office, but I was a criminal prosecutor for 6 years. When I was, citizens were not armed at that time with camera cell phones. If you were to provide a more robust enforcement strategy, there could be an explosive environment if non-smoking restaurant patron number 1 was to whip out a cell phone, snap it of smoking patron number 2, then call an enforcement unit and insist that that unit take the photograph, use it as a time-stamped device, and force an enforcement. That is one more burden on scarce city resources that folks like us
would want to avoid that.
I
believe in, I believe it's very good to do that. I wouldn't want to avoid the contact that is there. I think there should be we'll have to think what agency in the city, whether it's the building and safety. If someone gets a complaint that the restaurant at 795 South Largemont, which there's no 95 South Largemont, does allow this, then an inspector would go out and warn the owner. And if they hear it again, then maybe we could work with your neighborhood prosecutors in something in this area. Because I don't want to see citizen, as Mr. Weston spoke of, citizen to citizen, fight or argue or something of this nature here, because it does lead to other things that aren't possible, which are not good. But let's hear for the public. I have 3 public cards right here. I don't know if anyone filled the cards out or wanted to choose to speak, but Councilors...
Mr. Chair, if I might,
yeah.
The sticky wicket here is the enforcement.
Right.
I mean, you and I share boundaries, and we have establishments where you go in there any night and they're smoking. So the management is going to have to make a determination that somehow they're going to be engaged, and it is impossible for the police department to really restrict this activity. Plus, the fine is so minimal. I think it's like $500.
A maximum of $250.
Oh, is that what it is? So here I am, the owner of this establishment.
Right.
I'd rather pay the $250 fine and then just continue to do it. So I think this is the right thing for us to do, but we still have a lot of challenges, and nothing is perfect, so we need to move forward.
Right.
But the key is going to be some buy-in, or maybe some kind of way to accommodate the people that need to smoke, that aren't married and their wives force them to go outside in the rain, like me.
I got it. Very good. All right, let's have Victor Franco, Stephen Gallegos, Brian Berman. That's all the public cards that I have.
Good morning. Victor Franco with Econek, representing the Cigar Rights of America, the Cigar Trade Association. We want to thank you for working with us thus far. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and we think on our end we've made a significant progress and suggestions as far as concessions, as far as getting to where we are. I think the field trip, I want to talk a little bit about that really briefly. I think the field trip, while I think it was helpful, I don't think it was totally representative of the total picture in terms of restaurants. I was there for a brief period, walking through Larchmont and over to Piper's, one of my favorite places there. And particularly in Larchmont, the bakeries, the cafes, the coffee shops, I would absolutely agree with you that a ban should be enforced. But those aren't the places that we were talking about. The places that the cigar industry is talking about are places where you would go have a nice dinner and enjoy some cognac and enjoy a fine cigar later into the evening, where there are not children present, where for the most part there are not families present.
Give me a street where one of these places is.
There's a Boa Steakhouse in Hollywood. There's another location in Woodland Hills that does steaks and those type of dinners with cognac and cigars in an outdoor patio. There are a number of places in the Korean community that obviously Korean is more of a cultural aspect of smoking.
I think cultural is art too. We were the cultural thing. I love Bogart. No one smoked like Humphrey Bogart, okay? And man, when I was, after my playing days, Herb, I'd borrow bum smokes from guys who I knew smoked, and I'd smoke like Bogart. And that image, it's an all-image thing. I think the culture comes with education, because everybody wants good health. Even though there's a high amount of people who are from Europe or Asia or other parts of the world, everybody wants good health. So I want to throw the culture out. It's an education thing that we've got to deal with.
Well, and I agree with you. I think in maybe 10 years, will we be looking at cigars or cigarettes in a museum? Maybe. But I think that's going to take place over time. Again,
well, cigars you're not supposed to inhale. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. So there's a little difference.
It's a little bit different there. And so that's what we're talking about. I think we still invite you to come out to several of these locations, a couple in downtown, whether it's Morton's or the Palm, that have locations where people do this. The other issue is with signage, and I'm still concerned about the signage issue in terms of not only from the perspective of aesthetics, because I think it's important that every individual restaurant have
I interrupted him, so give him another minute.
different appearances of their, maybe not a big giant red anti-flame smoking thing in a palm or something, but something that the industry, I think, can come to an agreement where it doesn't seem to make smoking prohibitive, especially if you allow it in a outdoor dining area. And if that business owner who caters to that cigar crowd likes to have that in his restaurant or outdoor patio, that still can occur. So we hope that if you do move forward, the enforcement, we agree, is a totally different issue, but with the signage, and again, the restaurant, the type of restaurants that this takes place, this is not occurring, our folks are not in Chili's or in Denny's or in those type of restaurants, and maybe not even Piper's for the most part. But they are in finer restaurants and great establishments across the city. So we'd hope that you would keep some of the hard work and keep some of the changes that we've made so far.
If I drove down to Flower Street, is that Flower Street where you mentioned there's a place on?
There's one on the Palm, that's correct.
And I walked in there, I could find out where you could smoke, right?
Correct. There's also the Morton's here in downtown
Where do you
on
smoke
Fig.
at the Palm?
I don't, well, see, that's a good example. Okay, the Palm in downtown doesn't allow it because they've made that choice. The Morton's, however, does, and has a cigar cabinet and has a liquor cabinet where they encourage folks to go out into an outdoor patio and smoke.
But they're the only ones who are out there.
Correct.
Right. So there's no other dining out there.
There actually is dining out there. There are tables set up, and
That's the question. This is the tough question kind of there, Counselor. So let's look at this facility that has the general public come in there. Would the general public want to be out where the cognac and the cigars are?
well, the cognac and cigar display cases on the inside, it's obviously you enjoy those outside. You have that choice. And it seems to be a pretty large enough area where they have the choice to either stay inside in the darker area and be with their friends or be with their friends outside. It's about the diner's choice, not necessarily.
Okay, thank you. I'll drive by that place.
But see, Mr. Chair, this is where we have to be sensitive
Right.
and not treat people like lepers, because Victor is right, there are establishments like that throughout the state. So if there's a way to come up with a balance,
Right.
I, for one, would be supportive of that.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, council members, my name is Brian Berman. I'm with the Cigar Rights of America, and my role is the director of membership of our organization with thousands of members nationwide, but many of them right here in Los Angeles. And I won't bore you with repeating exactly what Victor had said, but I think it's important. I have a beautiful wife, just as you described, that doesn't care for my cigar smoking in the home, nor do I want to smoke near my children or near anybody else's children. Typically, I don't have my ice cream sundae with the side of a cigar. I put toppings on top. So I think the point here is, and we do want to acknowledge and appreciate all of the efforts that we've done, including the field trip, but I think it's very important to recognize that the establishments that were visited, the establishments we're talking about, the high-end steakhouses, the places that I go and spend my money and spend my time, is by choice, and it's not these bageleries or coffee shops or smaller establishments where
Right.
children may be present.
I got it.
Also, I just want to say the signage. We would be very happy and willing to work with the city attorney and anybody else for that matter to come up with the signage. I think it's absolutely imperative that we have industry
Did you smoke
representation.
cigarettes in that cigar parlor at Morton's or whatever the place is? Outside, where you drink cognac?
Well, my personal pride, I don't smoke cigarettes.
No, but
I'm a
do
cigar
people
enthusiast.
smoke out there?
There are some folks that choose to smoke cigarettes. In fact, there's an interesting dynamic because cigar smokers don't tend to mingle with cigarette smokers. Obviously, it's a little bit different.
Oh, Victor, now that's a stretch.
Well, come on, it's a little bit
Well,
different.
and I will say that
Stretch, Victor.
that the cigar smoker typically doesn't go around the corner and buy the trash can, as you suggested, as a cigarette to get a quick drag. It's a typical longer process. We sit down and we want to enjoy it as an experience rather than as a necessity.
No, and I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. And what happens in establishments like that, you go out, you're doing cigars. If a person does a cigarette, you just sit there and talk to them as well. Usually when I do something like that, I'll do a cigar with the guys, but it's not like The cigarette people are over
No,
here.
no, I wasn't inferring that.
And the cigar people over here.
It's a little bit different experience is what I was trying to...
Is the cognac out of a glass or in a bottle in a bag?
You just
Glass.
paper
Glass.
Just like that?
Glass.
All right. Thank you both for your input. Stephen? And then this is the last public comment card I have.
Thank you, Councilman Bonge. My name is Stephen Gallegos. I am the chair of the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Los Angeles County. First of all, let me reiterate, this is a public health issue. Sorry, I have my notes right here.
Take your time.
Thank you very much for the drive around that we did the other day. It was very enlightening, and obviously it showed with the poll that we saw, the man in the street, we spoke to 35 people, some of whom were smokers. 33 totally supported an outdoor smoking ban in Los Angeles. You know, the thing about this being a public health issue, that also included that what we passed, that the cities passed and that everyone has to apply by, is clean water, pollution controls for clean air, sanitation and food handling for restaurants. These are all government regulations and all designed to protect the public's health and safety. You know, while we support in spirit the ordinance that comes before us, we are hoping that it is also strengthened, and we look forward to working with Mr. Shulman and the City Attorney's Office to shore up some of the things that we saw that were lacking in the draft ordinance that we have, and the comments that we heard by the public the other day. We asked this committee to remand it back to the City Attorney for Mr. Shulman to implement the ideas and opinions we heard from the man on the street.
And woman.
And woman. Thank you very much. We think that, you know, this education component of this is very important because people need to know what the law is. And enforcement would probably, I assume, would be similar to that we have in the smoke-free parks that was passed. So, I mean, these are all good things, and we look with hope on this committee to make this all happen.
Thank you. From the American Heart Association, Eric Batch.
Good morning. You know, it's very interesting, Councilman, how, you know, two people can go on the same ride-along and have very different perspectives. I think the restaurants that we saw were very representative of the city of LA. And some of the suggestions that have been made thus far this morning are really a step backwards for the city of Los Angeles. We've always been a leader. Mr. Gallegos referenced, you know, beaches, parks. You referenced Mr. Browdy and the leadership that he showed when he was on the council. And I think it's very important that we have a strong ordinance going forward. There are a couple suggestions that we have ways to strengthen it. We agree with you in terms of the business owner liability that you mentioned. We've seen evidence of this in Santa Monica. We'd also like to see some improvements in terms of the definition of what an outdoor dining area is so that it's clear for, you know, those patrons and visitors to restaurants in the city of LA. We agree with you with enforcement. That's something that clearly needs to be addressed and cleaned up, and we look forward to providing suggestions to you there. We also feel that bars and nightclub, there's an opportunity there to really clearly, explicitly define that so that it truly is unequivocal in that regard. And then finally, really feel that there's an opportunity also to clean up the definition in terms of what a private event is. You know, what we do know is that we know the dire effects of tobacco and exposure to secondhand smoke. I don't know if you all saw last week's Institute of Medicine report, but it was very clear in terms of the exposure to secondhand smoke and what it can do in terms of increasing the number of heart attacks for both smokers and non-smokers. So thank you. I see my time's up.
Thank you very much. David Saltzman, is that right? Sorry, my glasses aren't on. Mr. Swartz, please. I knew that. Dean Swartz. Man, I really had it.
I'm a restaurant owner, and I've heard mention by the opposition of they would like to separate the distinction between cigarettes and cigars, and they both are the same act. They both have the same consequences for the damage to the air or to the other patrons. They also mentioned that they would like to have smoking in restaurants, and I do not know how we could define that. A restaurant's a restaurant, and what we're discussing is to create a ban in restaurants to protect the public. I worked at Barney Morton Steakhouse. I was a bartender and a waiter there, and I will say that it was torture to have to keep going onto the patio to serve the patrons there. And I don't know how we would propose to provide safe working places for people if the air is, the mere fact that you're forced to breathe, there's no way to provide fresh air and safe air for the employees that are there to make a living. And I'd also like to briefly talk about some of the other topics. Outdoor patio, I would love a better definition. I also have a restaurant now in the farmer's market, and we suffer due to the poor definition of the law. It's mildly enforceable. We have a definition of closed, and I would love it if we could have a definition of outdoor. What is outdoor dining? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. West, just to let you know, on a related track in that Largemont area, which you're familiar with, I have a problem on definitions that we want to be open, and whether it's a takeaway or whether it's a sit-down establishment, etc. So the city, it would, just to let you know, if we tried to attack the specific definition of a restaurant, because even on Largemont, many of those establishments weren't restaurants, but they were takeaway. The code is very wide in it's like the Indianapolis offense. It's very wide in their ability to try to do what they do. So I would not suggest that. I think we have to move forward in the sense of this is where we are today, and then as we build with education, and public education is so important, public pressure awareness. I also think this too, which is a little bit of a shock. There's a bus ad, cornification or California something. David somebody is a guy smoking on a city bus. Anybody seen that ad? Ticovey. Anybody see that ad on the bus? You've seen that? Yeah. I mean, I think there was a time, and I'm old enough to remember smoking ads on television, and that all got erased. And then all the NASCAR guys became driving for Winston and all the other things. There was a way they always worked to that advantage. I don't even know if there's any ads. There's not much ads left in Newsweek magazine anyway. It's so thin, any more smoking ads than that. But I think there's steps you have to take. If we want to make it perfect, it's going to be difficult, whatever perfect is. And to Eric, I think there's one question, too, that in our world of ours, there is a little vice in our world. And that vice is when someone's choice, whether it's what they read, what they look at, what they drink, and in this particular case, what they smoke. What we would try to regulate is how they do that so they don't impact us. Obviously on the highways for safety and motorists, now in the public health for workers inside restaurants or bars in that situation here. But as we make the steps, Mr. Browdy didn't flip a switch. It was a 25, 30-year fight that Mr. Browdy led in the effort for that should be remembered greatly. And he also was the father of the Santa Monica Mountains, which is great open space that he helped create over the course of time. So I wanted to make those comments to you. We do have a representative of the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Health. Is that correct? Okay, and Mr. Messick.
One last quick statement. We mentioned economics, and all the cities that implemented this ban similar to this have experienced an economic boom of the restaurants. People go to those areas specifically to be able to be protected.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Have you ever seen Californication?
No, just on the city bus.
I've only watched it once or twice, but trust me, you'll want to smoke after watching.
Oh, okay. I don't want to watch it then. I don't want to watch it. I'm a recovering smoker. You want to be on my side of the street, you know?
In fact, you and I are both about the same age. We're a little too old to live vicariously through Duchovny's character.
Right, okay, all right.
Watching it'll give you a heart attack.
Janice Chin is here from the American Cancer Society, and Ms. Lopez, is that correct? Yes. From the Valley Community Clinic. Would you please join us up there for comments? And thank you, everyone, for coming down. I think the big thing, too, is the California Restaurant Association. Yes.
I think Monty.
Monty, oh, I know, I got that, too. Very good.
Do you want to go ahead,
Monty,
Monty?
forgive me for not formally calling you. I called you, and then I got off on cornification.
I know, you
Yeah,
started.
I did. It's in there. I just don't think those ads should be on buses. I don't mind the guy sitting with rough hair and sitting on a step, but to have a cigarette in his mouth. Disney Corporation, to their credit, is the only film major studio that says they will not have glorification of smoking, or all in their movies.
Watch one.
I don't know if I can watch that. What time of day is it on?
I can't remember. Like I said, I've only seen it twice. My heart can't take it.
Yeah, okay. Monty.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
For the record, Monty's dog bit me when I was running for office.
It's true.
But I got the family vote. They're a beautiful dog. I knocked on their door. I took a choice. I said, okay, there's the door. I got to knock on it. And I didn't know Monty lived there, or his wonderful wife, who's a great teacher. And I said, if I don't knock on the door, this may be the one vote that I'll lose. That's how I operate when I will go door to door. So I knocked on the door, and the dog took after me and got me right on the top of the foot. He's a beautiful dog. We became friends later. But for the record, Madam City Attorney, I did get their vote, so thank you.
And thank you for not suing us.
No. Okay.
Yeah, my wife gives you regards, and I hope Charles is doing well in school.
Thank you.
Monty Messick, Deputy Director with the LA County Department of Public Health Tobacco Control and Prevention Program, Councilmember Weston, Chairman LaBonge. Two things I wanted to do is I wanted to read into the record a letter from Dr. Jonathan Fielding, Director of Public Health.
Give it my best when you...
I will, thank you. And also I wanted to provide you, especially Councilmember Weston, with an information kit that we've put together on the issue, and give you a copy of this letter. Okay, and this letter is made out to Council President Garcetti. Dear Council President Garcetti, the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health is committed to protecting the health and well-being of youth and general public in the County of Los Angeles. As part of its mission to prevent tobacco-related death and disease, the department supports strong local regulations that protect the public from the harmful effects of secondhand smoke in outdoor areas. The dangers of secondhand smoke are well documented, especially for children and adults with asthma or other chronic illnesses, pregnant women, and the elderly. Secondhand smoke has been designated as a known human carcinogen by the U.S. Department Environmental Agency, Protection Agency. The California Air Resources Board has put secondhand smoke in the same category as automotive and industrial air pollutants by categorizing it as a toxic air contaminant for which there is no safe level of exposure. A growing body of research has found that under some conditions, exposure to secondhand smoke in outdoor areas can be as harmful as exposure to enclosed areas. For example, a recent Stanford study concluded that short-term exposure to secondhand smoke in outdoor patios can be comparable to indoor levels. According to the 2007 Los Angeles County Department of Health survey, a majority of Los Angeles County adults agree that there should be more restrictions on smoking in outdoor public places. 71% favor a ban of smoking within 20 feet of public building entrances. 66 favor a ban on smoking in waiting areas such as bus stops. And I'm running out of time, so I'm going to...
No, we've got more time here with the County of Los Angeles, please.
Okay, thank you. Additionally, a statewide survey conducted by the California Department of Health Services in 2008 found that 76% of Californians agree that smoking should be prohibited in outdoor dining areas of restaurants. The public's health and well-being can be improved by adopting smoke-free outdoor policies. Such policies also affect changes in social norms regarding tobacco use, foster an environment that helps current smokers cut down or quit, and encourages former smokers to remain smoke-free. To date, a growing number of cities and counties throughout the state have adopted policies prohibiting smoking in outdoor areas such as parks, beaches, dining patios, service lines, and theme parks. 28 cities in Los Angeles County have adopted smoke-free parks policies. 11 cities have adopted policies that prohibit smoking in outdoor dining patios. And with the exception of Avalon, all cities and county beaches are smoke-free. I applaud you and the Los Angeles City Council for considering regulations that will protect the people of Los Angeles from secondhand smoke at outdoor dining. Please contact me or Linda Aragon, Director of the Los Angeles County Tobacco Control Prevention Program, if you have any questions or need additional information. Sincerely yours, Jonathan Fielding, Director and Health Officer.
Just a question I want to have, in the unincorporated, there's 88 cities in the county, in the unincorporated areas, which is direct supervision by the County of Los Angeles, is our proposed ordinance exceed or lessen than what is in, let's say, Altadena, Athens, areas that are not part of a city but under county jurisdiction?
Currently, in the unincorporated areas of the county, there is no policy that would prohibit smoking in outdoor dining areas. Thus, this
Right, so
proposed
this is
ordinance would be much stronger.
a step in the right direction. All right, thank you so much.
Sure. And let me just give you these.
Super.
Or I'll give them to the
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Janice.
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning, Councilmember.
Reintroduce for the record.
I'm sorry?
Reintroduce yourself for the record and the
Sure.
microphone.
Janice Chow with the American Cancer Society. Good morning. Just want to make sure we've got the full 2 minutes.
Your time, you could do it.
Thank you.
Tell us your passion.
Okay.
This is real important. Why do you work for the American Cancer Society? Why do you want to see this banned? What has affected this in your life? That's
Absolutely.
all that matters.
A strong smoke-free outdoor dining ordinance is supported by the American Cancer Society because this decision is going to bring you one step closer to protecting the health of everyone in your community from exposure to secondhand smoke. The secondhand smoke is a very serious health threat, and there are many scientific reports to prove this fact. I think Monty touched on the California Air Resources Board findings, and that the U.S. EPA has classified secondhand smoke as a known human carcinogen. The 2006 U.S. Surgeon General's report also concluded that secondhand smoke causes premature death and disease both in children and adults who don't smoke, and also has immediate adverse effects on the cardiovascular system. The burden of exposure on your citizens remain unequal. Of the 126 million non-smokers who are regularly exposed to secondhand smoke, including employees in restaurants and bars, who are routinely exposed at greater levels than the general populace, remain more at risk for developing health problems as a result. This presents a serious health issue to workers who are directly affected by high levels of exposure to secondhand smoke. It's estimated that over 50,000 Americans will die each year from secondhand smoke exposure, and 3,000 of those people will die from lung cancer. Tobacco is the most preventable cause of death in this country, and accounts for at least 30% of all cancer deaths. Today's news reminds all of us that we have a great duty to protect the health of all Americans. Just to remind you that the American Cancer Society is here to serve as a resource and to help provide as much support as possible for this ordinance.
Thank you very much, Janice.
Thank you.
Ms. Lopez?
Good morning, Councilman LeBlanc and Councilman Wesson. My name is Alicia Lopez, and I am Program Director of the Tobacco Prevention Program at Valley Community Clinic, and we're located in North Hollywood. So I wanted this morning just to read a letter from our CEO, Paula Wilson, in support of this ordinance. It's dated September 22nd, 2009, and it's addressed to Councilman Garcetti. Dear Council President Garcetti, Valley Community Clinic recognizes the grave dangers of tobacco use, witnessing on a daily basis the harmful effects of smoking and secondhand smoke. Since 1993, we have collaborated with the LA County Tobacco Control and Prevention Program in its efforts to combat tobacco use and exposure to secondhand smoke. Hence, we do not allow smoking within 20 feet of doors and windows and in our outdoor dining area to ensure that our patients and employees are protected from the dangers of secondhand smoke. We are very committed to protecting the health of children and adults alike in the city of Los Angeles and support any smoking restrictions that would seek to reduce secondhand smoke exposure indoors and outdoors. The dangers of secondhand smoke are well documented, especially for children and adults with asthma or other chronic illnesses, pregnant women, and the elderly. The California Air Resources Board has deemed secondhand smoke toxic air contaminant for which there is no safe level of exposure. As such, the public's health and well-being can be improved by adopting smoke-free outdoor policies. A growing number of cities and counties throughout the state have adopted policies prohibiting smoking in outdoor areas such as parks, beaches, dining patios, service lines, and theme parks. Valley Community Clinic urges you to move quickly to pass the ordinance to prohibit smoking in outdoor dining areas. Eliminating secondhand smoke from outdoor dining areas will improve the health of all Angelenos, both children and adults alike. We hope you will consider passing this very important public health initiative. Please contact me or Alicia Lopez, Director of our Tobacco Prevention Program. Sincerely, Paula Wilson, President and Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you very much. This concludes our public comment on this. Counselor?
Councilmember Wesson, Committee Member Labange. First of all, I would like to bring your attention briefly to a misprint in this morning's LA Times. There is a very fine reporter there that I had a very positive conversation with, and I have no doubt that it was not her responsibility,
Trust
but
me,
some
that-
typographer.
That caught my attention this morning. I know what you're going to say.
I couldn't stop laughing. I'm all alone with my coffee on my couch, and I can assure every member of the City of Los Angeles that the ordinance does not prohibit smoking within a 40-mile radius of food kiosks. That raises so many
I think they
complex...
saw that, they must have said, where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah.
I live in the Mid-City area.
Wow, because I don't know if I saw that in my paper. I read it. Yeah. I think it depends on what, maybe it's an early press and an early type. Could that be, we'll check with the paper. They read it. But anyway, my paper didn't say that, but, okay, yours did. All right, what time's your paper come to your house?
5:15.
4:40. So I don't know why, but anyway.
As your committee process draws to a close, I'd like to take the initiative first to note that our office reviewed all of the outdoor smoking ordinances that either we could find through our own research or were brought to our attention by various advocates. And as far as our office is aware, this draft ordinance as it stands is the most advanced in articulating three distinct outdoor dining areas. The first is the one that's addressed by all of the ordinances, which is your classic outdoor patio next to a restaurant. But we take great pride in the fact that we carefully looked at the living experience of people in this city and recognized that a great deal of dining occurs in outdoor food courts. And this ordinance, as currently drafted, very carefully imposes duties and responsibilities so that food courts are treated the same as any other outdoor dining area. And then the third step that was not addressed in anything else we've reviewed was to create a no smoking area around a mobile food vendor, whether it's a kiosk or a food truck. It just was feet, not miles. In conclusion, there are four brief issues that either we have caught in our own review of the ordinance prior to today's meeting or we've heard discussed today. The first is, regardless of what your committee determines to do, we would ask if you would authorize us to correct a drafting error where in one part of the ordinance we say 30-foot radius, in another part of the ordinance we say 40-foot radius. The intent was 40-foot radius. So in whatever way this committee moves forward, if we're authorized to correct that technical drafting error.
So authorized.
The second is to ask for direction from you regarding the issue, Committee Chair Labange, that you referenced before, which is, do you want this ordinance amended so that outdoor dining area, when an establishment has two separate outdoor dining areas that are sufficiently distant from each other, that one may be smoking and one may not? I've not yet received a clear indication.
This is a question in looking at other facilities, and I was thinking of some restaurants on Vermont that we probably have been to at events, where they have two distinct entrances. There's a front and a back. This may not be satisfactory as we make steps into our advocates, but if there's two distinct areas more than
100
feet apart, that they would. And for those who took the walkabout, I thought of that when I was at the place on, Western Avenue, where I saw there was a little confrontation, either it was with the driver or what was the person who was out in the back, if you remember that there. You weren't there, but that's where I thought of that. So if you could put that in there, that does give an option then to look at those people. Now, to explain that, so this is everyone who took the walkabout. It's 100 feet from Western Avenue front entrance of that restaurant to the rear. There would be an option for that business then to create a space out back within the code. So that you're clear on that. Okay, thank you.
What I'm hearing is that when there were two, the front would be no smoking, the back would be smoking.
Correct.
The third is, again, technical, but would clarify. There are different signage responsibilities by different entities. Currently, the ordinance is clear when the public education signage needs to be up. It is not crystal clear when the permanent signage would be up, and as your lawyer, I would prefer that oversight on my part be clarified so that the duty to have the permanent signage only attach on the day that the prohibition fully takes effect.
But the temporary would
have to be there within 30 days of the ordinance being passed.
We're looking at a 6-month period of education. So for the permanent, what would you suggest?
Let me walk it through. As currently drafted, you asked us to write a 6-month public education period. In that period will begin immediately after the ordinance takes effect. Within the first 30 days of that 6-month period, all of the affected businesses would need to put up a public education notice about what's coming down the pike. Then, at the end of that 6-month period, the permanent ban would take effect, and it's our recommendation that the permanent no smoking signage only be required to be up when the permanent ban takes effect.
I suggest that would be the proper place on the counselor's recommendation. So that's so ordered.
And as written, the public education sign would come down at the end of that first 6-month period.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Correct. But it also, if the public education sign finds a home there, I don't mind it down. Do you know that when we put in a always stop, we take out the crosswalk? Do you know that? That's what we do. And I say, why take the if you put a stop sign, and there could be a street without a stop sign, in a local street, but have a crosswalk. Once you put a stop sign in, DOT takes out the crosswalk. And I'm saying to myself, well, if it doesn't have to be removed, it just could fade.
Then, Mr. Chair,
do you understand what I'm making sense? If it makes sense to have public information and education up there, that's okay with me. It doesn't have to be removed.
What I'm hearing is very easy to add as another technical amendment, and that is that the public education notice must remain up for at least 6 months.
Right.
And may need not be removed.
Right.
At the end of the 6-month period.
And that it should be in English and in whatever, and how do you require that?
My understanding during the walk around and in discussion with your staff is that nonprofit support agencies will provide signage in other language that can be downloaded from the internet, but that the only...
I think it should be our responsibility because we have contract.
If I may,
City Clerk's office has contract.
Mr. LeBonge, while this is not my area of specialty, I believe the moment jurisdiction begins to require signage in other languages, we run into a how-many languages.
Got it. All right, got it. I got it. Okay. Very good point, Councilman.
And then lastly, the last issue that we spotted during our meeting is the one that you spent the most amount of time discussing, and that is the enforcement issue. And what I've been hearing up till now is to let the ordinance remain as it is, where a violation of either the signage requirement or the smoking requirement is an infraction, but that there be no city agency with any special designations. Thus, if 6 months, a year down the road, there is a glitch in the system, this committee can always fix it.
How many violations for smoking have we issued citations, to your knowledge, in the last 5 years?
I don't know. There may be somebody in the audience who is more familiar
Is
with
anyone
that.
familiar? There's a representative. Would you come forward, please? You're a city representative, and please introduce yourself. You're a city attorney, too, right? No?
I direct the tobacco enforcement unit, but the core responsibility is with retailers and the 200 retailers that we have permitted in the city.
Right, but you're with the city attorney's office.
Yes, I work on the same floor.
She is smarter than a lawyer.
Right.
No.
Well, okay, do you know of any time that we've cited Johnny's Bar for people smoking in it?
I mean, currently, just historically, the labor code, when it came into effect, there was a big public education period. So I think it's important to note the history. And the Los Angeles Fire Department Public Assemblage Unit is the designated responsible enforcement entity to investigate those cases. But there are few cases, and we have a designated city attorney, our agency in our criminal division, that currently files some of those cases. But we get probably, 6 to 7 per year. And it's also an infraction, but the long-term part is that the businesses that continue and that we have a case filed against in criminal court are those businesses that are recalcitrant, the businesses that are repeat violators. So that's who we have our problems with. It's not, everybody else complies with the labor code, but
right.
That's what it is.
Well, with that suggestion, I think we should keep it the same with the fire department and the city attorney's office. I'm not looking for an additional workload. There may be a little bit of a bump if people make a complaint, but I think if we have people assigned to it, they do look at public assemblage, they do supposed to inspect every building to make sure the exit sign is lit. Every restaurant has that. I think that would be a simpler way to go.
Mr. LeBlanc, I'm afraid that this is a little bit more confused on the one hand, and yet I can offer, I hope, a further clarifying remark on the other. As it stands, there is no requirement that the fire department be responsible not only for the labor code, which is the statewide indoor workplace smoking ban. There is no requirement in this draft ordinance that the fire department also be tasked with this new regulation. I can offer one further bit of comment. I had the privilege 2 years ago of drafting the city's last no smoking prohibition, which was city permitted outdoor farmers market areas. There was the same infraction requirement. There was no special enforcement provision. Because I was the attorney assigned to drafting it, I would suspect that if there had been an enforcement problem in those subsequent 2 years, I would have heard about it, and I have not heard of a single problem. So this may be one of those, it's not broke, don't bother to fix it.
No dogs at the farmer's market, no smoking at the farmer's market.
With no agency assigned to enforce
So
it.
I'm going to take your recommendation then, but know that if it is a problem, we should then come back. And I think if we could have your department and your very special civilian in the city attorney's office, who you said is smarter than a city attorney, because she was very articulate in her remarks. I thank you. For the record, state your name, though.
Oh, Nora Manzanilla.
Thank you, Nora. So is that all right with you, Mr. Wesson? Fine. Okay, so then let's move forward with this here. Madam Clerk, what do we have before us? We got it all.
For clarification, I believe the committee's recommendation is to approve the ordinance with the amendments recommended by the city attorney.
Again, is it possible that you could have this before corrected into council, that we could have this published before the new year? So maybe when we get to the new year, let's say January 15th, by January 15th, that it would go in effect, that 6-month period would be between January 15th and June 15th or thereabouts?
I would need somebody else to do the backwards calculation from when it was pass, but if you're talking about passing it out of the committee and having the amended ordinance to the full council, I'll get to work on that right away.
All right, I
As soon
think
as you want to get it
we
there.
could do that, so we could be within the next,
Going to come back to committee?
no. We're going to send it to council. I'm prepared to go to council if you're prepared to go to council, if you're prepared to go.
And these amendments are simple,
Yeah.
they're technical, and they can be done as expeditiously as you want to move forward.
I'm going to go down to your restaurant, but if it's the same impact, you may have to look, because there's an option now we made available for restaurants if there's 100 feet difference and if they have an outside area there. I haven't been to your restaurant. I think maybe if I have, it's on Figueroa Street? Yeah. Where is it in Hollywood?
I use the address, I think it's on Sunset in Hollywood.
Really?
The other clubs have.
I only go to Musso Frank's, so that's fine.
Mr. Chair, given your return to the issue of the
Yeah.
given your return to this last issue regarding some of the high-end restaurants, while it would require some more analysis, I think there may be an equal protection problem if one was to say A, B, C kinds of restaurants are not regulated by this ordinance, but D, E, F kind of restaurants are, unless you were to begin to create new zoning regulations, which becomes quite complex quickly.
I got it. So your recommendation is not to...
From
it's all for one for all.
One for all, unless you want to start doing your own dividing, and then we're here to serve.
I got that, but I don't think it works. You know, when it does that, I think they transform. When I look at it, I didn't hear that till today, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, from Morton's or the others. I would have made an effort to go to that. So I apologize for not hearing it until this moment I heard it. That all being said, I think we have something that could help the people of Los Angeles, which is so important. That's our goal. When spoken by county officials and others, advocates, it is about health as we look at it. And I do know there is a freedom that people want and choice, whatever that is, and I got that, and I want to try to balance that. This doesn't affect nightclubs and the licenses that apply to those nightclubs and the effects that they may have on this here. It does affect restaurants where they would be a family would go to dine at this area here. I think we have enough to go forward to council on this, so if you could change that and then come back, we could go to council. I will do some additional outreach. I do believe in when you do an instant poll, which you did on Larchmont, with overwhelming number of people did absolutely support it, which is very important at that same time. But I also would say at the same time, it's very complicated to say what's a restaurant and what is a takeaway, and all those other things there. So it's the space that we're dealing with that is so important. And I think it was the intent of Mr. Smith, who is a great council member, who brought this item to us in the first place. That is, as you pass an area where you may be, it does affect you. So trying to get that space, what is all there. So with that, Mr. Weston?
Mr. Chairman, I will support whatever you recommend. The only thing that I personally like about having something come back to committee, it gives us an opportunity if we need to fix it, and then when it goes to the on the council floor, it's ready to go. But now...
No, that's a suggestion. No, but you're older than me, Herb. So I believe in that. Not by a whole lot, but I believe in that. Let me ask you a question. When's our next meeting, Madam Clerk?
November 24th would be the next regular.
Do you have that done by November 24th?
It's not a question of my getting it done, but it then going through our internal review process. Obviously, we would work to expedite that. If we could make it the first, the next meeting after that.
In November?
Then that would give us the time.
November.
That would be December 8th.
December 8th?
Yes. The next meeting is November 24th and then December 8th. November 10th is a council recess.
Right. League of Cities. And then the next one would be
November 24th.
November 24th?
But we've got that internal review. I will be gone for a week during that.
That's okay.
block. So if you make it December 8th, then it could get to the city council quickly after that and just about meet your January to June.
Okay, all right, that's good. I want to get this to the council in early November. I want to come back.
Not early November.
Yeah, early November is before the 15th.
I'm confused, and I'm sure it's my fault.
I know, that's all right. Yes, well, you were very good there, Mr. Shulman. Thank you so much. On November, our first meeting is in December. Let's go to December. December 8th.
I will see.
So on December 8th, and hopefully by the 15th of December in City Council, so we could hopefully we get a vote of unanimous,
I plan on supporting
You got it.
this.
But that would be better to have that. Okay. So, that being said, and I feel in the consensus of the room, this matter will be scheduled again for December 8th at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you. This meeting now is adjourned.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right.